There are some stories that leave a dark mark on a community, haunting it for years to come. The case of J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett is one of those stories. For nearly 24 years, the town of Ozark, Alabama was gripped by fear as the brutal murders of two teenage girls remained unsolved. Now, after years of wondering and searching, it appears that the person responsible has finally been brought to justice. On July 31, 1999, friends J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett left their hometown of Dothan, Alabama to attend a field party in honor of J.B.'s 17th birthday at their friend Jana's place in Headland. On their way there, they got lost in Ozark and never returned home. Police discovered their bodies the next day. The two girls were killed execution style. Tracie had a single gunshot wound to the temple. J.B. had a single gunshot wound to the cheek. They were stuffed inside the trunk of J.B.'s 1993 black Mazda 929 and left on Herring Avenue in Ozark. 2 decades later, a man is finally arrested for the crime. But will the family gain some semblance of closure, or are there still lingering questions that remain unanswered? Welcome back to True Crime Expresso, where we'll explore the tragic murders of J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett, and a new update on the case that's been 2 decades in the making. The hot summer night of July 31, 1999 was supposed to be a night of celebration and freedom. As some would say, a teenage rite of passage. J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett were both 17 years old, full of life and dreams. They were just a few days shy of starting their senior year. But what should have been a carefree evening of fun quickly turned into a decades-long nightmare. The bodies of J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett were found unceremoniously crammed into the trunk of J.B.'s Mazda and left to rot in the sweltering Alabama heat. The news of the brutal murders sparked a manhunt for the killer, and the investigation was intense and exhaustive. The police were working with only a few crucial pieces of information. They knew that the girls had been killed execution style with a single 9mm gunshot to the head. Despite being fully clothed and covered in mud, there were no clear signs of struggle. J.B.'s license was on the dashboard, and both girls' purses were still inside the car. In the weeks following the murders, the investigation stalled. The police had no leads and no suspects. But then, a bombshell report from the state lab indicated traces of semen found on J.B.'s bra, underwear, and skin. It was a crucial piece of DNA evidence that would prove to be the key to solving the case. Initially after the murders, there were a few small leads, but those leads would only bring investigators to frustrating dead ends. 1 month after the tragic slayings of J.B. and Tracie, 28-year-old Johnny Barentine came forward with a confession, claiming that he had seen a black truck speeding away from the area where the girls were found. When it was discovered that Johnny lived less than a mile from where police discovered the girls' bodies, he was placed under arrest. Police named him the prime suspect in the murders and charged him with capital murder. It would seem like law enforcement had put this case to a quick close, but inconsistencies with Johnny's story and the evidence became too concerning to ignore. A neighbor he implicated had an alibi, and the semen found at the crime scene didn't match. Johnny Barentine would later tell a grand jury that he fabricated the entire thing to get the reward money. He was exonerated, and all allegations were dropped. Investigators were back to square one. Though there were rumors, speculations, and theories about what happened that fateful night and who could have been responsible for the senseless murders, the case went cold. For 2 decades, the investigation into the murders of J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett seemed to sit at an insurmountable standstill. That was until 2018, when the capture of the infamous Golden State Killer using DNA technology inspired a renewed sense of hope among investigators across the country. It was a watershed moment that gave rise to a new generation of sleuths, determined to use every tool at their disposal to bring justice to the victims and their families. When the notorious Golden State Killer had finally been charged with 13 counts of murder 40 years after his crimes, Ozark Chief of Police Marlos Walker submitted the evidence collected from J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett's crime scene to Virginia-based Parabon Nanolabs to help find the suspect. The efforts were very much worth it, as they were able to develop a genetic profile and run the information through the public DNA database to track down family members of the alleged suspect. Within months, they got a hit: 45-year-old Coley Lewis McCraney. Police Chief Marlos Walker recognized the name. He was a high school classmate. The two even played basketball together. A DNA sample collected from McCraney confirmed the match to the crime scene DNA, and he was arrested on March 17, 2019 for the double homicide during a traffic stop. It was a stunning revelation. For all intents and purposes, McCraney lived a quiet and low-profile life. He was a truck driver who had spent a short time in the military and served as a bishop at a local church. The long-awaited murder trial was originally scheduled for September of 2020, but the onset of the pandemic led to a delay. In August 2022, there simply weren't enough suitable jurors present. It was a crushing setback for the families. The trial finally began on April 17, 2023 at the Dale County Courthouse, where Coley McCraney faced 5 counts of capital murder. Over the course of the grueling trial, multiple forensic scientists took the stand, providing crucial testimony that helped shed light on the circumstances surrounding the murders. One particularly damning piece of evidence came from a forensic scientist who confirmed that vaginal swabs taken from JB in 1999 had tested positive for semen. This revelation left no doubt as to the perpetrator's guilt. In the years since McCraney's arrest, he had maintained his innocence, alleging that he was unfamiliar with the 2 girls and had never seen them. In a surprising twist, that story would change during the trial. Instead, Coley McCraney told a different version of events. He testified that he and J.B. Beasley had arranged to meet at an Ozark gas station at 10 p.m. the night of July 31, 1999. According to his testimony, they had met nearly 2 months earlier at the Wiregrass Commons Mall. However, J.B. never showed up to the gas station. As McCraney drove home, he encountered car trouble. That's when he ran into J.B. and Tracie at the Big Little store. Since they were lost, he offered to show them a shortcut back to Highway 231 in exchange for a ride. They stopped by where his long-haul truck was parked, and McCraney offered to give Beasley a tour of the inside. This, according to McCraney, ultimately led to the two having consensual intercourse while Tracie remained in JB's car. McCraney claimed that the girls dropped him off at his house around 12:45 a.m. and they parted ways. This testimony contradicted the state's theory that McCraney threatened the girls with his 9mm handgun and led them into a marshy area. Once there, he allegedly forced Beasley to take off her pants and sexually assaulted her before shooting both girls execution style and stuffing their bodies into the trunk of JB's Mazda. He then parked the vehicle on Herring Avenue and walked home. Ultimately, the jury agreed, and on April 26, 2023, Coley McCraney was found guilty on 4 counts of murder in the deaths of J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett. He was also found guilty of sexually assaulting J.B. The jury later deliberated for 13 minutes before coming back with a sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. After McCraney's sentence was announced, he was put in handcuffs and led out of the courtroom. Tracie never got to go back home to her mom, and JB turned 17 years old the day she took her last breath here on Earth. After nearly 24 years, justice was finally served for the tragic murders of 2 17-year-old girls who had their entire lives ahead of them. The arrest and subsequent conviction of Coley McCraney brought some closure to the families and loved ones of the victims. However, the anguish and pain of losing 2 young women in such a senseless and brutal act will never fully go away. J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett's families have had to endure years of unanswered questions. And while the determination and dedication of law enforcement and forensic scientists led to McCraney's eventual conviction, it also serves as a painful reminder of the irreplaceable loss they've suffered at the hands of a man no one could have suspected. It begs the question: what other dark secrets are still hidden in the small Alabama town, waiting to be uncovered?